Have you noticed how love can turn from warmth to weight without warning? One day it lifts you, the next it drags you under. You start replaying old messages, reading silence like scripture, waiting for a sign that maybe, just maybe, they still care. But here's the cruel trick. What hurts most isn't that they're gone. It's that a part of you stayed behind, kneeling in a memory that no longer exists. The Stoics warned us about this quiet collapse when we give someone else the power to define our peace. They called it the beginning of slavery of the mind. Detachment isn't about closing off your heart. It's about freeing it from the leash of illusion. And if you want to truly break that chain, you must begin where every Stoic did, by preparing for the one truth no one wants to face. Everything changes. Expect change and train for it. There's an old man I used to see on my morning walks. Every day at sunrise, he carried 2 plastic bags to the market. His wife walked beside him, always wearing the same faded blue hat. They had their rhythm, the same stalls, the same playful arguments, the same laughter. It looked unshakable, like a ritual carved into stone, until one morning only he appeared. Same bags, same steps, but no one beside him. He still paused at the fruit stall as if waiting for her comment, as if her absence might suddenly speak. But she would never answer again. That image has stayed with me for years, because it whispered a truth we all resist. Nothing is permanent. The people you think will walk with you forever will one day take another road. The routines you believe define your life will eventually fade. Even your own youth will slip away like mist in the morning sun. And yet, we cling. We grip life as if permanence were promised. We hold people as if they belong to us. And when change comes, as it always does, it breaks us. Not because of the loss itself, but because we never trained for it. I remember a friendship I thought would last a lifetime. We spoke daily, shared secrets, shaped each other's dreams. But slowly, invisibly, the calls stopped. The texts came late, or not at all. And the harder I pulled to keep it alive, the heavier it felt, like dragging something that no longer breathed. Until one day I had to face it. I wasn't holding a friendship anymore. I was holding the illusion that it would last forever. The Stoics understood this rhythm. They didn't call it pessimism, they called it preparation. They reminded themselves daily, this too will end. Not to love less, but to love more wisely. Because once you stop demanding forever, you begin to live today fully. Here's the shift. Impermanence isn't tragedy, it's what makes life sacred. Imagine a sunrise that never ends. Would you still feel awe as the light returns? Of course not. It's the ending that makes it beautiful. Impermanence isn't tragedy, it's what makes life sacred. In the same way, knowing people and moments will pass makes their presence burn brighter while they're here. I think of the mother who keeps setting an extra plate at dinner, even after her son has left for college. At first, she avoids the empty seat. It hurts too much to look, but the more she resists, the heavier the silence becomes. Eventually, she does the opposite. She rehearses it. She sets the table for one, imagines the quiet mornings, walks into his empty room. And when the day of goodbye finally comes, she still cries, but she does not collapse. Tears aren't weakness. They are the heart unloading weight so you can stand. She had already trained her heart for that moment. Seneca once wrote letters to his friend Lucilius, reminding him to picture the death of loved ones, not out of cruelty but gratitude, so that when they were still alive, every glance felt like a miracle borrowed from fate. Think of the samurai sharpening his blade each morning, not because he seeks battle, but because discipline keeps fear from owning him. The same training applies to the heart. You polish awareness until even loss bows before it. That's what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. It's not about suffering before it happens. It's about freedom, to meet change with calm instead of shock. So tonight, choose one thing you secretly fear losing: a person, a routine, even your health. Close your eyes and imagine life without it. Let it sting, just a little. Then imagine yourself still standing, still breathing, still moving forward. Do this often and fear loses its grip. You begin to cherish what you have while you still have it, because a life will change. That is certain. The only question is, will you cling so tightly that change destroys you? Or will you train so deeply that change reveals you? Stop demanding forever. Start living today. Protect your peace. It was never theirs to hold. But knowing that everything changes is only the beginning. The real storm comes when your own mind starts lying to you, turning silence into rejection. Let's talk about that. Facts versus fiction. Stop self-wounding. There was a young man I once knew starting his first job. Eager to impress, he spent an evening crafting a long email full of ideas and progress reports. Then he waited. An hour passed. 2. Midnight came, and silence. By then, his mind had turned that silence into a monster. Did I say too much? Did I embarrass myself? Did I just ruin my future? Sleep never came that night. The next morning, his manager replied with a single line: "Appreciate the update. Good work." I was in meetings all day. That was it. The agony he'd lived through was built entirely in his own head. You're not broken for overthinking. Your brain is trying to protect you in the wrong direction. We've all done this. A message goes unanswered and we start composing tragedies. A friend sounds distant and we invent betrayal. A colleague walks past without greeting us and we script a whole story of rejection. The facts are harmless. It's our imagination that turns them into blades. And in today's world, the cycle spins faster than ever. You send a message. You see the word seen. Nothing follows. Your pulse jumps, thoughts race, and before you know it, you're scanning their feed, watching them like someone studying evidence at a crime scene. They liked another post. They watched another story. The verdict arrives. They don't care anymore. But the reality is far simpler. They saw it, that's all. Everything beyond that is fiction authored by fear. Psychologists today call this cognitive distortion, the mind's habit of filling empty spaces with danger. Marcus Aurelius called it simply opinion. 2,000 years apart, same prison, same key. Even celebrities fall into it. Think of the letters Vincent van Gogh sent to his brother, begging for reassurance after every painting. The silence between replies nearly destroyed him. Yet history proved that silence meant nothing about his worth. It only revealed how early genius is often unseen. I've fallen into that trap myself. One night, after a long talk with a close friend, I sent something deeply personal. Hours passed, no reply. By evening, I was certain I'd gone too far, said too much, ruined everything. The next day, I learned his father had been rushed to the hospital. My pain wasn't punishment. It was imagination run wild. The Stoics warned about this. They said life doesn't hurt us, our judgments do. An event is neutral until we decorate it with emotion. A pause isn't rejection unless we choose to see it that way. Think of your mind as a courtroom. Facts are the witnesses, stories are the lawyers, twisting every word to win the case. When the lawyers run the room, silence becomes betrayal, delay becomes dismissal, and one unread message becomes a full-blown heartbreak. But when the judge, your reason, takes control, you see clearly. A pause is just a pause. A no reply is only time passing, nothing more. A pause is just a pause. The pain begins the moment we turn it into a story, and sometimes it helps to laugh at the madness. If overthinking burned calories, half the world would be athletes by now. But it doesn't make you stronger. It just drains the life out of you. So here's a practice. When your thoughts start spiraling, grab a sheet of paper. Draw 2 columns. On the left, write facts. On the right, write stories. Then ask, where does my pain live? In the fact or in the fiction? Fact, they haven't texted me back. Story, they've stopped caring. See the gap? That gap is where freedom hides. To go deeper, add one more question. What else could this mean? Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're struggling. Maybe it has nothing to do with you at all. The goal isn't to soften reality. It's to stop stabbing yourself with your own thoughts. Most of the suffering you carry wasn't carved by life. It was sculpted by imagination. The moment you separate truth from story, the wound closes. So from this day on, whenever silence stings, don't rush to fill it with fear. Write it down. Name the fact. Question the fiction. That's how you take your power back. Quietly, wisely, completely. Will you be the judge or the lawyer in your own mind? If these words hit home, write thought in the comments. Not for me, but as a promise to yourself. To never again mistake imagination for truth. Own what you control. Years ago, when I was still chasing success like a man outrunning his own shadow, I worked with a partner who was impossible to satisfy. I studied his moods like weather forecasts. If he frowned, I fixed everything before he spoke. If he hinted at a change, I worked through the night to deliver it before dawn. I believed that if I gave enough time, effort, loyalty, he'd see my worth, and the partnership would last. But the harder I tried, the colder he became. His silence cut sharper, his absence grew heavier, and I kept asking, what more can I do? Until one morning he simply walked away, leaving both the project and the illusion I'd built around it. That moment branded a truth into me. I had spent months trying to steer what was never mine to steer. His choices, his faith, his heart. No amount of effort could rewrite his story. My mistake wasn't caring too much. It was believing I could bend reality through force of will. The Stoics made it simple. Peace begins where control ends. Our domain is narrow but powerful. Our thoughts, our actions, our responses. Everything beyond that, opinion, desire, outcome, is the open sea. You can't command the waves, but you can learn to hold the helm steady. Epictetus compared life to a voyage at sea. The sailor controls the sails and rudder, never the wind. Today, our winds are moods and markets, other people's tempers. We still panic when they shift, forgetting that mastery is steering, not forecasting. The calm captain inside you must learn to act, not react. Look at your own life. Maybe you keep reshaping yourself to hold on to someone drifting away. Maybe you work yourself hollow for a boss who never looks up. Maybe you're the one keeping friendships alive while others have already let go. The exhaustion you feel doesn't come from love. It comes from misdirected control. I still laugh at myself for it. Back then, I tracked every metric, profit margins, deadlines, client happiness, but never the only one that mattered. Peace. Imagine a spreadsheet for your soul, columns of chaos on one side, calm on the other. Which would you rather see filled? Here's a small practice. When anxiety grips you over someone's reaction, pause. Ask 2 questions. What is mine to shape here? What is not? Circle the first. Cross out the second. then act only on what remains. Simple, but it's freedom disguised as discipline. That failed partnership didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It taught me that my worth was never tied to another person's approval. And when I stopped chasing outcomes I couldn't command, my effort became clean, my choices clear, my spirit calm. So I'll ask you, whose emotions are you still trying to manage? Whose approval are you still chasing when the only life you were meant to lead is the one within your own command? If this truth lands in you, write steady in the comments as a reminder that peace isn't found in control. It's found in alignment. Boundaries over burnout. She was a woman I once knew, kind, patient, endlessly giving. Whenever her husband drifted into silence, she rushed to fill the void. When he withdrew, she reached deeper. She cooked his favorite meals, softened her words, forgave his absences without question. She believed that if she just loved harder, he would finally stay. But one night, after another long stretch of quiet, he looked at her and said, "I never asked you to care this much." Those words broke her, not from cruelty, but from clarity. He hadn't asked. She had volunteered her own disappearance. That's the trap so many of us fall into. We confuse devotion with duty. We mistake endurance for love. We carry burdens that were never ours, and then call the exhaustion proof of loyalty. But compassion isn't self-erasure. The Stoics would call it madness to lose yourself while trying to save someone else. You cannot trade away your dignity and name it virtue. Tolerance is not the same as captivity. Look closely at your own life. Have you ever poured yourself dry trying to heal someone who never asked to be healed? Have you played the rescuer until your own spirit went missing? You don't earn peace by bleeding for it. You earn peace by guarding it. I've lived this lesson too. I once tried to fix everyone's storm. Friends, partners, even strangers. All it proved was how fast I could disappear inside their chaos. You don't win medals for setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. You just forget what your own warmth feels like, and yet we glorify burnout. We wear exhaustion like a badge. We say, "I'm just too caring. That's my flaw," as if depletion were a sign of virtue. It's not. It's the quiet evidence that boundaries have gone missing. Even the strongest burn out when they mistake service for surrender. Mother Teresa once said, "To keep a lamp burning, we must keep putting oil in it." Many forget the second half of that sentence. She rested, she prayed, she refilled. Without renewal, even saints turn to ash. The Stoics would nod. For them, self-preservation wasn't selfishness, it was duty. A soldier who collapses from exhaustion cannot guard the wall. So here's your practice. Take a blank page and draw a single line down the middle. On the left, write what I can give freely. On the right, write what is not mine to fix. Keep it where you can see it. When you feel yourself fading, look at that line. That's the line between compassion and collapse. The woman I told you about eventually understood this. She stopped apologizing for needing more. She stopped treating silence as proof of strength. And one evening, she simply stood up, pushed back her chair, and walked away. Not in anger, but in peace. For the first time in years, she felt weightless. So tonight, here's a small gift. Write one boundary that protects your energy and one promise that honors your fire. Say it softly. I can love deeply without losing myself. Now let me ask you, are you still pouring yourself into someone else's emptiness? Or will you finally guard the flame that keeps you alive? Protect your peace. It was never theirs to hold. If this spoke to you, write fire in the comments as a quiet reminder that love without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. Warm detachment and rebuild. When I lost everything at 34, the business collapsed, my marriage ended, I locked not only the doors of my house, but the doors of my heart. I told myself I was strong. I buried every feeling, convinced that silence was discipline. Friends called it composure. They were wrong. It wasn't strength, it was anesthesia. Numbness is a safety reflex. We can learn to switch it off safely. One night, Kai looked at me across the workshop light and said, "Closing your heart doesn't protect it, it suffocates it." Those words cracked something open inside me. For the first time, I asked myself, was I really surviving or slowly dying behind my own armor? Years later, I met Elena. She carried a kind of quiet steadiness. No games, no noise. Her kindness was like sunlight through fog. It didn't demand, it revealed. When I withdrew, she didn't chase. She just stayed, calm, grounded, unshaken. And in that presence, I realized numbness was never strength. It was fear dressed in discipline. Too many of us call that numbness healing. We bury the pain so deep that even joy can't find us anymore. But that's not moving on. That's hiding. Real detachment is something different. It isn't made of ice. It's made of clarity. It's the ability to care without collapsing, to give without emptying, to love without losing yourself. Warm detachment means you can let go without resentment and still carry compassion as you walk away. I remember Jonas, a friend who once left his old guitar by my door. At first I ignored it, but one night, when the quiet grew too loud, I picked it up. The notes were broken, the strings cut my fingers, but the sound was mine. Slowly, the room stopped feeling like a coffin and started feeling like a workshop again. You don't just release, you rebuild. That's what warm detachment really is. You don't just release, you rebuild. Think of Beethoven after losing his hearing. The world thought his silence meant the end, but inside that silence, he composed the Ninth Symphony. Joy born from isolation. That's warm detachment, turning absence into art. Every heartbreak carries raw material for creation. Pain is wood, discipline the chisel, purpose the flame. What you carve from it becomes your peace. Rejection has its place in this too. I knew a man who spent years chasing his dream job. When they turned him away at the final stage, he fell into despair, convinced he'd been erased. Months later, he built something of his own. A year after that, the same company tried to hire him back. By then, he didn't need their approval. He had already approved himself. Epictetus said, "Some things are within our control, others are not." Wisdom is knowing the difference. The same truth applies to love and loss. You cannot decide who stays or who goes, but you can choose whether the leaving makes you bitter or better. Here's your practice. Write one boundary that lets you stay kind without being consumed. Then write one small act of rebuilding you'll begin tonight. Read again, walk again, create again, breathe again. Because detachment without renewal is emptiness, but detachment with creation is freedom. And remember, walls keep everyone out, even the light. Boundaries let the right people in while guarding your peace. So ask yourself, are you building walls or shaping gates? Protect your peace. It was never theirs to hold. And if this reached you where you needed it most, write light in the comments. Not as a reaction, but as a reminder that even after loss, your heart can open again to the dawn. This is Move or Die Stoic, where we learn to let go without going cold and love without losing ourselves. So here we are. You've walked with me through change and loss, through the stories your mind invents, through the limits of control, through the weight of overgiving, and finally, through the space where detachment turns warm again. And maybe, somewhere along the way, you recognize yourself. In the friendship that faded without a word. In the message you reread until it hurt. In the love you gave until you disappeared. Or in the silence you've been carrying like armor. But listen, this is not the end. Detachment is not death. It's the clearing of ground before new growth. It's the page between chapters. It's that quiet dawn after the storm, when you realize you're still here, breathing, whole. Too many believe they are broken because someone left. But brokenness is not your truth. You are simply rediscovering what was always yours, the power to stand, to choose, to create, to love again without losing yourself. They were a chapter. You are the book. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." The pain that stopped you was never the ending. It was the doorway. So protect your peace. Guard your stillness. It was never theirs to hold. Every era had its threshold. Marcus faced exile. Nelson Mandela faced 27 years of silence. Yet both walked out lighter, not harder. The difference wasn't fate, it was focus. They refused to let bitterness own the final word. You can do the same in your private wars, the end of a bond, the loss of a dream, the closing of a door. All are the universe rearranging you toward clarity. Sometimes the quiet you fear is just space being prepared for your next truth. Before you leave, take one small breath. Close your eyes and whisper, "I am not what I lost. I am what I rebuild." Because detachment is not about closing off. It's about opening to a larger life. The end of one connection is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of authorship. The page where you stop writing for approval and start writing for your own rebirth. Emotional detachment doesn't make you love less. It makes you love wisely. What threshold are you standing at right now? One word only. If these words found you at the right moment, write inner freedom in the comments. Not for me, but for yourself, and for every silent fighter watching beside you, so we know we're not healing alone. This isn't goodbye. This is the threshold. Step across it. And don't just survive, rise. If these words gave you space to breathe, share this video with someone who might need the same reminder. You never know whose peace you might help protect.